Hello everyone, my name is Kevin and I'd like to welcome you all to our latest Novedge webinar series episode. Today we are partnering up with Autodesk's own Technical Marketing Manager Heidi Hewett. The AutoCAD Revit LT Suite 2014 with both AutoCAD LT 2014 and Revit LT 2014 offers an affordable transition to the world of building information modeling, also known as BIM, without sacrificing the AutoCAD LT software you know and love. Today's session we'll introduce you to the similarities and differences between AutoCAD LT and Revit LT from AutoCAD user's perspective. So, if you guys don't know who Heidi is, Heidi Hewett began using AutoCAD as a student in 1986 while earning a BS in architectural engineering. She soon transitioned from an Autodesk customer to an employee, and during her 20 years career at Autodesk, Heidi has dedicated herself to helping Autodesk customers, partners, and employees learn AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. Heidi is the perfect person to talk about today's subject matter. Today's presentation is about 40 minutes long, and afterwards we'll have a brief Q&A session where Heidi, Gary, and Scott from Autodesk will answer your questions live. So feel free to submit your own to us at any time into the chat window below. But before we get going with the presentation, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. So the Novedge webinar series is brought to you by Novedge.com. As one of the largest online design software stores, we offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. If you're interested in purchasing the latest digital version of Autodesk's Revit LT Suite 2014, it is available from us in the United States as a digital delivery. To learn about this and the rest of our Autodesk catalog, you are welcome to call and speak with our Autodesk specialist, Scott Hester, of whom you can reach at scott@novedge.com. And to get a glimpse at who is changing the world of design one step at a time, please visit Novedge's very own blog. Every week our interviews shine a light on those innovators whose work break out from the norm. I do want to mention that answers from your webinar questions will be shared here as well. So for more details, please visit us at blog.novedge.com. And last but not least, please stay up to date with what's happening in the design industry by following us at our Facebook page at facebook.com/Novedge. And coming up next week, V-Ray 3.0 is the most anticipated software release in the CG industry this year. Artist-driven features and improvements such as single-click progressive rendering, optimized brute force sampling, and faster here rendering are just a small part of what's in store. Simeon's presentation will provide an in-depth look at some of the new features and updates, so don't miss this chance to learn more about the next best thing from Chaos Group. The webinar is free and will last about an hour, including the Q&A session. So if you want to sign up for this free event, head on over to novedge.com/webinar/87. Last but not least, if you have to leave early, no worries. Today's webinar is being recorded live, so if you want to rewatch episode 86 in its entirety, as always, you can find it on our Novedge webinar series channel through Vimeo and YouTube. And with that said, Heidi, are you ready?
I am ready.
Cool. Let's kick this off. I'm going to make you a presenter right about now.
Okay.
All right, attendees, please enjoy, and please submit your questions as well. Thanks.
Let's see. I'm not sure if I have the right screen going.
I do see the
Okay,
BIM slides.
great.
Cool.
So hopefully you're all able to see that. And I just have a couple slides here. Just if you are not familiar with BIM, Building Information Modeling, a very quick overview of it is building information modeling provides insight for creating and managing projects, and the idea is that you can do this faster, more economically, and with less environmental impact. Now I know that sounds like a lot. If you look at the cycle over here on the right side, you can see that BIM is the ideal BIM situation is supposed to kind of starts with the planning process, takes you through design, build, and even into managing buildings. Now if you've been using AutoCAD LT, you've likely been focused on just the design part. So as I get into Revit LT and just kind of introduce you to it, Revit LT being the tool that will take you into the world of BIM, I'll focus on just that little part, that design part. But keep in mind that Revit LT really is an introduction, a way that you can start taking your process further into all these other categories, all the way through managing. Now, to introduce you to Revit LT, I'm going to be using a project, and I just want to give you a little background on the project. This is a church in northern England that was renovated into apartment buildings, and some of those, AutoCAD was used for some of the designs, and then Revit for some of them as well. So I will be using a Revit project just to show you some of the things that you can start looking at with Revit LT. All right, let's go ahead then and switch over to Revit. Now, if you are familiar with AutoCAD LT or AutoCAD, and I may be using the terms AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT interchangeably, but I will try to be specific if there's something that I want to that's specific to one versus the other of AutoCAD or LT. But in general, what I'm going to do is take you through and just kind of compare what you might be familiar with in AutoCAD LT to what you can start expecting if you begin using Revit LT. Now, before I get into the details there, I want to just take you into a project, one of these apartments that has been completed or close to completed in Revit. And I want to show you just some of the power of BIM, of using this intelligent model-based design. So it kind of looks like an AutoCAD drawing. If you just look at the floor plan here, we've got some standard architectural elements and our walls and windows and doors. And I'm going to zoom in to part of it here with this one room. Now, it's really easy with Revit and this intelligent modeling to create additional views and parts of your design that relate. So, for example, you could have a floor plan, a section plan, even 3D models that are all related because they're looking at the same intelligent geometry. Just very quickly here, I'll go ahead and create a section. So I'll go up here to my section tool and pick 2 points to define my section line. So just that easy, I was able to create a section line, and not only did it draw the section line, which is what I might do in AutoCAD LT, but it actually created the corresponding view. And if I double-click on this section tag, it automatically opens up that section view. So this is similar to creating different views or maybe different DWGs in AutoCAD, each one having your geometry that you want to look at for that particular section or plan or detail view. I'm going to go ahead and tile these so we can see both drawings that I have open, and I'll zoom. Now, of course, this is completely controllable how much you see of the view. So very intuitive using grips. Now, the power of BIM, as opposed to something that's more traditional with 2D CAD, is that these are all looking at the same geometry. So if you want to make a change, and we know that never happens in the architectural world, right? You've designed all these drawings. Maybe you've got details and sections and all these different drawings that about this particular room and this door, and now somebody realizes that the door needs to move. So here in Revit, I'll just go ahead and select that door and move it down. And you can see that not only in my 2D plan does it move, but it also moves it in the section view. And in fact, I can even open a 3D view of the drawing or this model, and I'll go ahead and tile that. And we can see that if I go ahead and select that door again, it selects it in every view. I can move it in any of these views. So previously I moved it in the plan view, but I could also, maybe it more design, gives me a better design idea if I select it and move it in my section view. So I can do that, move it further down. Or if I'm looking at my 3D view, I could also select it and move it in there. So whatever makes more sense. In any of these views, you can be modifying and editing your design and know that it's going to update. Oops, I think I just deleted it. Let me undo that. Know that it's going to update in any of these views. So this is just a small example of one of the many. I mean, you can imagine this whole design here, how many of these different related objects, windows, doors, walls, roof, ceilings, floors, all of these are related to each other here in a BIM environment. Now just think of doing this in your two-dimensional AutoCAD LT drawing. If you were to do something as simple as moving a door in a 2D plan, not only would you have to move the door, which would likely be a block in AutoCAD LT, but you would have to trim and extend and completely clean up this wall so that it looks appropriate once you've moved that door. You can see here as I'm moving it in Revit LT, that it automatically cleans up all that geometry, in addition to cleaning it up in all those other views. So that's just a quick look at a finished or closely to finished model in Revit LT. But if you're like me, you might look at this and think, well, that's great, it's all magic, but that's when somebody's already done all the work. So what I want to do is take you into a brand new drawing starting completely from scratch in Revit LT, and we'll just look at some of the similarities and differences compared to working in AutoCAD LT. So we'll go ahead and close these. And this will take us back to the default interface. As soon as you launch Revit LT, this is what you see. Now this can look a little bit overwhelming if you're used to AutoCAD LT because it does look different. But let's just take a look at what these different areas of this screen are. You can kind of think of this as like a welcome screen. So on the right side, we have the Learning and Help section, and here we have links to a lot of different tools that you can use to start getting up to speed with Revit LT. There's links to various videos and other content over here. So that's a great resource. On the left side, this is divided into two areas. On top, we have projects. So all of these across the top are related to projects. And down here, we have families. Now, I know those terms are different than what we're used to in AutoCAD LT, but you can kind of think of projects as your set of drawings. And you can think of families sort of like your symbol libraries, like your block libraries. They're using different files, and it's totally different technology because it's much more intelligent with Revit LT, but you can kind of relate it to AutoCAD in that way. So for example, for projects, here we have all of the recent projects that I've opened. I've got thumbnails where I can quickly go open one of those recent projects. Or I can open and navigate, choose Open here and navigate to wherever I want to access other projects that I have. Or I can choose New, which is what I'm going to do. So I'll go ahead and choose New, and I can select from different project templates. This would be similar to using DWG templates, except again, a project is a much different type of file. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just take the default here, an architectural project. And that takes me into my blank Revit project. Now on the, let's look at some of the user interface elements. First we'll look at some of them that are the same or very similar to what we're used to in AutoCAD LT. If we go up here to the left, you'll see that we have our application menu, and that should look very similar to what we're used to in AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. Across the top, we've got the quick access toolbar. Now some of these tools are a little bit different, but in the idea and some of the tools are the same as what we're used to in AutoCAD LT. Over here, we've got InfoSys, where we can search for help and sign in to Autodesk 360. So this is very similar to AutoCAD, AutoCAD LT, and other Autodesk products. Across the top, we've got the ribbon interface. Now again, the tools look quite different, but if you compare Revit LT 2014 to AutoCAD LT 2014, and I'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to switch over to AutoCAD LT. Oh, I said AutoCAD I have launched. Yeah, that's all right. I just have AutoCAD there, so I'll stay in Revit LT right now. So this ribbon interface is very familiar, even if the tools are different. And then let's go ahead and look down at the bottom. So here we have the status bar, and we've got various icons. Now again, these icons are different, but the idea is the same. We've got a status bar. And over on the left side is something that you could compare to the command line in AutoCAD LT. And we'll talk more about some of those tools as we start working. Now these palettes, these are some common palettes that you would use in Revit LT. And this project browser, this might look a little bit different than what you're used to. You can sort of think of it like the sheet set manager, which was introduced into AutoCAD LT in fairly recent releases, but has been in AutoCAD for quite a while. So it's not quite like the sheet set manager, but you can think of it similar to that. And if you haven't worked with the sheet set manager, that's okay. I'll talk more about this project browser as we go. And then the properties palette is something that we're all probably familiar with from AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. And in here, this is where we can select objects and see their properties and modify their properties. Now, the properties look different because Revit, again, is specific architectural type objects, but the idea with the properties palette is the same. One thing I do want to point out with Revit LT 2014 is different than AutoCAD LT is that you can actually overlay palettes on top of each other. So here I have the properties palette. I'm just going to drag it out so that it's separate. This is what we would probably see in AutoCAD LT. We would have multiple different palettes that we could have open. In Revit LT, you can do that. So I could drag this palette over and actually have them kind of stacked, visibly stacked. But in Revit LT 2014, something that's different than what we can do in AutoCAD LT is that if you drag one palette onto another one, drag the title onto another palette title, then you'll see that they actually tab. So here I've got tabs to switch between my different palettes. That's kind of a neat feature that's more unique to Revit LT. So you'll see that I'll switch between these different palettes. All right, so those are some of the things that are similar to AutoCAD LT. Let's go ahead and just start looking at some of the differences. Now, here, our main tab in Revit LT is this Architecture tab. And if you dig deep, you'll actually see that you have tools that are similar to what we're used to in AutoCAD LT. If I go over here to this Model Line tool, for example, click on that, it displays this contextual ribbon tab. And I can see that it's contextual because it's green. I've got the green ribbon tab here, and I've got these green panels over here at the right. You may be familiar with that from AutoCAD LT as well. There are certain things that you can do in AutoCAD LT where you'll get a contextual ribbon tab, such as using the array, associative arrays, or hatching. So it's the same idea here in Revit LT. And I have to say that even though there sort of is a command line down here at the lower left corner, what I have found using Revit LT is that I sort of treat these ribbons more like I would the command line in AutoCAD. So in AutoCAD, you know how you always say, look at the command line, because that's where you'll get the information that you need, or you'll know what to do next for your current command. I have found that in Revit LT, I always tell myself to look at the ribbon tabs, because if they're green, that means I'm in something contextual. And we'll see more about what that means as I go. But if you find yourself in Revit LT and you're kind of confused about where you are, just like in AutoCAD, you can be in a command and be a little bit confused which command you're in or where in the command you are. You know, you can always press the escape key, and sometimes you press it multiple times to get out of that command. You can do the same thing here in Revit LT. So if you get into something, you're not quite sure where you are, or it's not doing what you expected it to do, you can always count on that, the escape key, once or twice or multiple times if you want to get out of it. Okay, so I selected that tool. I'm going to go ahead and press the escape key again and get out of it and show you again. Here we've got the Model Line tool. And I want to show you this so that you see that there are tools that are similar, that you can get into these modes that feel very similar to working in AutoCAD or AutoCAD LT. So for example, I have all these tools over here where I can draw a line. Let me go ahead and do that. And drawing lines and circles and arcs feels very similar. We've got, we pick our point, we can drag and type a value. We can, get the angle, just like we have our polar angles in AutoCAD LT. So this process, whether I'm doing lines or walls or other geometry, should be very familiar to you. Here I've got my arcs and circles and other geometry that I can create. Okay, but this is just plain old geometry like I would have in AutoCAD LT. And that's not really taking advantage of the power of Revit LT, the power of BIM, which is those intelligent objects like walls, doors, and windows. So while you can get into these tools, and there is a reason to use these tools, maybe you're creating a custom window shape, for example, and you need to design that window shape. You can do that with these tools and then create what would be kind of compared to a block or a family like I described previously. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and get out of this mode. So again, I know I'm in this contextual mode because of the green. If I want to get out of it, I can either press the escape key a couple times, once or maybe more, or you can always go over here to the left side. Here I've got this Modify tool, and if you think about it in AutoCAD LT, whenever you're not in a command, you're always in this default selection mode where you can select an object and then do something to it. That is kind of what this is. Here we see it. We've got the Select panel here and Modify. So if I click on that, that is taking me to what would essentially be the blank command line in AutoCAD LT. Okay, so it's got no objects selected. I'm not in anything contextual, and it's the same as pressing the escape key a couple times. Okay, so here I've got some geometry, but I'm going to go ahead and select that and get rid of it because this isn't really smart geometry. So selecting is very similar to AutoCAD LT. You can either pick an object or you can do a window, an implied window, right to left or left to right, depending if you want to cross objects or have objects fully selected. So all of that is very, very familiar. I'll just go ahead and select those. I could right-click and choose delete, or we can use this icon up here, which is the delete or erase tool. Okay, so selecting should be very familiar to you. All right, so in the drawing area, one thing that you might notice are these little icons indicating elevation. So by default, when I create, using this particular template, the default template that I used, it automatically created some elevation views, and it put in these icons so that those elevations will be marked. Now, right now I have my Properties palette selected, so I'm going to go over here to my tabs and choose the Project Browser. And you can see that I've got these different elevations listed. So this is my north, south, east, and west elevations, and that's what these icons are indicating. We won't look at that right now because there won't be anything in it. Let's go ahead and draw some walls so that we can actually see something there. All right, so since we're in this intelligent BIM application, Revit LT, instead of drawing lines, arcs, and circles, we want to draw intelligent walls, doors, and windows. And we'll go up here to our wall tool. And this, right off the bat, I can start drawing just like I would be drawing maybe a D line or an M line in AutoCAD or AutoCAD LT. So you see here it's got showing 2 lines right here. And again, I can type values. I can use my object snaps. I can eyeball it. The nice thing is that it doesn't, if you're just trying to sketch out a design, it's really easy to modify later. So you can really focus on the general idea of your design and not worry too much about values because it's so easy to select and modify objects later. All right, so I have some lines or walls down there, which is similar to my D-lines or multi-lines or lines that I have offset in AutoCAD. Now, one thing to point out that kind of threw me is, again, this contextual tab up here. In AutoCAD, if we were drawing lines or walls or double lines or something like that, once we finished placing those, we would automatically be back to our default command line. But here in Revit, we can continue drawing these walls, and we stay in this contextual wall creation mode until we tell it we're done. So even though I'm creating various segments over here of walls, I'm still in this contextual mode that I can see up here by the green. Go ahead and undo that crooked wall that I just created. So something to be aware, if you're trying to maybe select one of these walls and try to move it, which is something we might do in AutoCAD LT, just realize that you're still in the contextual mode. Go ahead and press Escape or hit the Modify tool so that you get out of that contextual mode. And then you'll be able to select those objects just like you would expect and modify them very easily. Okay, so very, very easy. Don't have to do cleanup. The walls automatically clean up themselves. All right, so let's go ahead and create another wall, and I'll point out some of the other differences with Revit LT compared to AutoCAD LT. As we were creating the wall, we see this right here, this options bar that has tools or values that I can apply to that wall that I'm about to create. So by default, for example, it created a wall that was 20 feet high. Maybe I don't want a 20-foot wall. Maybe instead I want a 10-foot wall. So I'll go ahead and change that value. As I was drawing these walls, they were drawing from the center line, but maybe I actually want to draw a wall that's from the finished face, or the, we'll say the finished face exterior. Let's try that one. Okay, so you can modify these options, and if you don't modify them here, the great thing about this environment is that you can always select these objects and change their properties later. But I'll go ahead and just pick a point to start drawing this wall, and you can see now instead of drawing from the middle of that wall, it's now drawing from the exterior face. I'll go ahead and pick the point and just finish off that wall. And if I select that wall, go back to our modify mode so that I'm in the selection mode. Now notice when I select that wall, I've got different icons here indicating, so when I drew it, it said that it was the exterior face. That actually becomes important here in Revit LT compared to what we're used to working with in AutoCAD LT, because these walls have intelligence. There's an intelligence to them. There's an inside, there's an outside. Maybe we've got brick on the exterior and drywall on the interior. You actually can control what is the inside and the outside, and we'll take a look in a little bit at the materials and how those are defined. Okay, so, but again, just the way that you work with it is very similar to AutoCAD. You select objects, you can modify them with grips, and in Revit LT, there's various different icons. I'm going to go ahead and move this wall, just rotate it around a little bit. I want to see that height of it from this view down here. Okay, so we drew these various walls, and this one happened to be 10 feet, whereas the others were at the default 20 feet. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these different views. So here, we'll just click on some of these different views. Here's the east elevation. There we've got the south elevation where you can see that 10-foot wall compared to the 20-foot walls. So we've got this 3D for free. If we go up here and look at our 3D view, and I'll go ahead and tile everything that I have open. So I've got my 3D view here and my different elevations. Even though we were drawing in the floor plan and behaving and kind of creating it very much like we would in AutoCAD LT, it comes along with this height and these 3D properties just by default, just for free. So you do have to think about it. If you do want a wall that's 10 feet as opposed to 20 feet, or you want it to go from one level to another level, then you do have to think about it. But you have to think about that anyway. If you're creating a project in AutoCAD LT, at some point you're creating the floor plan and then you're creating elevations and sections, and you have to think about what materials that wall is going to be and what height and how it's going to meet with the roof and what all of that is going to look like. The difference with Revit, working in a BIM environment with Revit LT, is that you're thinking about those things as you design, so that when you're done, it's generating these different drawings, these elevations and sections and plans, and it has all of those components already together because you've been actually designing the way that you think, which is 3D. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at some other things here. All right, so all we did is so far is insert some or draw some walls. Let's go ahead and zoom on that. And again, I'm using familiar tools like double-click the mouse wheel to zoom extents or roll the mouse wheel to zoom. It's all very familiar if you've been doing that in AutoCAD LT. So we have these walls. Now let's go ahead and insert some doors and windows. Now in AutoCAD LT, we would insert blocks. And if we wanted to insert a door or window, say in the wall here, we would have to trim those lines away and clean it up. And if we moved the door, just like I showed you earlier, if we moved the door, we would have to re-clean up all those lines. With Revit LT and these intelligent objects, it's much easier. So we go to the Architectural tab. I'll go ahead and select Door. And if I go to the Properties palette, we can see a preview of what this door is that I have currently selected. And we can change the type of door or the different options, the sizes in this case. So here I can see different size doors that I could choose from. I'll just go ahead and select one of those. And I'll insert it here. Now notice as I drag from one side to the other side of the wall, it changes the position of the door, which way it's flipping or opening. Okay, so I've inserted that door, but you may look at this list and think, well, that's not enough. I need other doors. That one's kind of simple. It's the same idea as with AutoCAD LT, and you have your block libraries. You can either purchase libraries, or it comes with some symbols, or you can create your own. In Revit, these symbols or objects that you use frequently over and over again are called families. So if I go up here to the door and I decide that one door style is not what I want, I can come over here to my contextual tab. Notice that it's green. I'm in this contextual mode. And I can choose Load Family. So I happen to be working with doors, but you can see here when I choose Load Family that there's all kinds of data out here. I can go into lighting or plumbing or windows. There's all kinds of different symbols or libraries that I can choose from. Okay, I'm going to go to the doors, and here I can see different previews. It's got a double door with glass. Maybe we'll try that one. Okay, so it's kind of like inserting a block from some external file. You insert it into your AutoCAD drawing, and then you've got that block definition within your AutoCAD drawing to use. Similar idea here in Revit LT. I've just loaded this family. Now I have that definition in my drawing, and I'll just go ahead and insert this one version of the door right there. But not only is this just one version of the door, we can see here, if I go into the drop-down list, that that particular door, this double glass door, has different sizes associated with it. So you can sort of think of that in AutoCAD LT as having dynamic blocks that you've defined. But again, these are much more intelligent. Okay, so here I've inserted my doors. I can go ahead and do the same thing, same process for windows and other architectural components. Insert a window. I'll just insert a few of them while I'm here. Now, if you've inserted it and something's wrong, for example, I inserted these windows and maybe I don't have it going the right direction. If I select that window, notice it does have a directional component, just like our walls. So I can flip where that window is. I'll flip one direction and leave the other one the other direction. If it's not the right size, I can go in here and change its size. Let's do a small window for that. Okay, so easy to change, selecting from these different library options, basically these families. Now again, we're getting everything for free. Just because we're creating this in our floor plan, our two-dimensional floor plan, doesn't mean that that's all we've got, which would be the case if we were using traditional CAD. If we go to one of our other views, and I'll go here to the project browser and open that south elevation again. And let's go ahead and open the floor plan again. And I'll tile those so we can see them. Okay, so here we've got our floor plan with our doors and windows, and now we've got our elevation. So, the elevation. So this is, these are just a few components. We looked at doors, windows, and walls, but you've got many other architectural components. Columns, you can create roofs and floors and ceilings, all kinds of different components, and have a lot more, a lot of flexibility on what those look like. But what I want to point out now or show you some of the different options for viewing. This is similar to what we have in AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT with visual styles, and actually it is called visual styles here in Revit as well. So for example, I'm looking at this elevation, and here we've got the option for, we've got two different things that we want to look at. We've got detail levels and we've got visual style. Visual style is what we're familiar with from AutoCAD products. If we look at that, we'll see that right now it's in a wireframe visual style, but I could change that to be realistic. Now in this case, I'm just using a very generic wall type. Maybe that's not what I want, so I'm going to go ahead and select this existing wall, just this one right here, and using my properties palette, familiar method, I'm going to change it to a different wall type, just like we change properties in AutoCAD LT all the time. But in this case, I'm changing it from one wall type to another wall type. Let's do something interesting like this exterior brick and CMU on metal set. We'll go ahead and choose that one. And now, looking at this view, and we could even open up our 3D view to make it more interesting. We'll tile all of those. So here we can see that that one particular wall that I changed to a different wall type has other properties. Now again, this 3D view is looking at it in a wireframe visual style, but I can go ahead and change that to realistic so that I get something that's a little bit more realistic to see. And I can see that you can see that we can see right through the glass windows, and we see the wooden door and the brick. So again, part of this intelligence that we have with BIM is that these aren't just dumb lines, arcs, and circles. These are walls, and they have properties. They know that they have drywall or brick or other properties to them. They know how thick they are. It's not just a matter of drawing a line and offsetting it. that can take more thought in the, up front in the process, but it's something as part of your design that you have to think about and have to decide on anyway. And it's very flexible, so you can always be changing these walls and their properties as you go. But let me just take you in so that you can get some feel of what that looks like, these wall definitions. How does it know to look like this, for example? Okay, let's go ahead and take a look there. We'll go to properties. And actually, we'll just go right here from the, say we were going to start a new wall right from scratch. Okay, you're going to create a wall. Right here in our properties window, we could choose from any of these standard walls. Or we can edit. Let's go ahead and choose edit type here. This pulls up our type properties, and this is sort of like styles that you might create in AutoCAD. You might create a different dimension style or text style, something that defines properties that you want objects to have. Well, it's the same idea with walls in Revit LT. Here we've got this type of wall. We might duplicate it. Maybe this is close to, actually let's pick a more interesting one. Let's start with that brick one. So I'll go ahead and select that, and let's do edit type. So maybe this is close to what we want, this brick and CMU, but let's duplicate it and create our own custom one. So I'm just going to call this Heidi's wall. Okay. Now there's a lot of different properties. We won't go into all of them, but the one that you're probably most curious about, you would find here under structure. If we go over here and choose edit, so we've basically defined a new, copied that existing wall type, created a new one, and now we want to modify its properties. Here, looking at this wall assembly, we can see different functions and different materials for these wall components. We've got our plywood layer, we've got the brick on the outside. Here we've got layers above because we had the brick above, and then we've had CMU below. So we've got a lot of different properties here that we can look at, and we can customize how thick those are, what they look like, and what material they're going to use, so that when we look at it in a realistic mode, we actually see a material that applies to that. So if you're completely new to this, if you've only worked in AutoCAD before and this whole BIM thing is new, this can look a little bit overwhelming, but think of the process very much like you think of any other styles in AutoCAD LT, and realize that these properties that you're applying are things that you would be applying or thinking about somewhere in your design anyway. Okay, so that was just taking a quick look at a wall example, but you can think of the same process for other things like doors and windows and other properties or other objects that you would be having here in your model. All right, I think that is, I know I ran through a lot of stuff very quickly. I'll show you one more thing, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions and talk about some of the options that you have if you want to start moving into this world of BIM with AutoCAD LT and Revit LT and the suite. But let me just very quickly show you one more thing here. If we look at our elevations, one of the things that we drew that wall. It happened to be 20 feet by default. But as you create your drawings, you naturally would have different levels. Maybe you have a 5-story apartment building, so you've got five different levels for those stories. The power of BIM and Revit is that you can not only have to enter specific values, like knowing that each of these walls would be 10 feet or 20 feet, but you can have them linked to each other. So you might have the wall property, the height of it, not necessarily be a value, but it would go up to level 2, wherever level 2 is. And then level 2, if that changes as your design, as you move that, and right now I don't have that wall linked to it, but as you change that level 2 height, that wall goes with it. And think of the whole thing, all of this happening with your different components, like your roofs and your ceilings and all of these different architectural components. Just like we saw in that model with the St. Mark's apartment that was more completed, where we saw things moving and adjusting. So just a quick look at some of those different components that you'll want to start investigating and be familiar with as you work towards the BIM, a BIM environment. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move back to the presentation. I know I talked a lot there, and I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. And I think at this point, Gary, are you going to talk about the rental plans now?
Yeah, real quickly. So, Heidi, thanks, Heidi. So briefly, just wanted to let folks know that today we announced a couple of days ago that AutoCAD Revit LT, Revit LT Suite, and a lot of our design suites are going to be available through rental. And so you can rent a license for the software for monthly, for 3 months, or for annual, on an annual basis. So, Heidi, next slide. So, real quickly, so there's a couple of reasons you might consider rental. One is that it's a there's a lower upfront cost. So, if you want to get started, for example, with the Revit LT Suite, you could get a 3-month subscription through Novedge for $269 versus paying $12.89 for the perpetual license. So it's a great way to get started using a suite like the Revit LT Suite. It's easy to ramp up and scale down. So if you have project spikes, this is a good way to acquire some additional licenses for a short-term basis to meet the needs of a particular project, accommodate peak work periods. So it gives you some flexibility. And then lastly, that rental always includes the latest tool. So it's like buying perpetual with a subscription. If, for example, we came out with a new version of Revit LT Suite, if you're on rental, then you would automatically have access to that new release. So, okay, last slide, Heidi. So really that's it. I just wanted to let folks know that there's this new licensing option. We haven't done this before, so this is brand new. You can continue obviously to purchase a perpetual license, and that's ideal if you want to pay once, you're using it all the time. But we also have these quarterly and annual rental plans, great for shorter term projects, and a way to have lower upfront costs. So that's it. Just wanted to let folks know about the rental options that are now available, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Cool, awesome. So let's take a look at this. If we can. Oh, Heidi, is there anything else that you want to cover, or we do have a lot of questions from the Q&A, and I'd like to get Scott in on this. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for our attendees to ask more about the rental options as well. So Scott, is your mic on, or yes?
It should be.
Yep, cool. Heidi, let's get started.
Great.
Cool. Let's see. So we have one question from Kyle. Scott, I'll let you. I guess I'll read the question, and then you can read the answer or your answer.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So Kyle had this question. Looking forward to transitioning to Revit as an office platform. What is the major difference between Revit and Revit LT, and why not go straight to full Revit besides cost? So.
Okay. So I've somewhat answered this, but I can dig into more detail if needed. There's several major differences. Although there's a lot of functionality in Revit LT that is very similar to Revit architecture, the major differences around work sharing, which is a sort of the ability for multiple users to work on the same project file. There's also no APIs, so no third-party add-ins can be added to Revit LT. And the conceptual design tools are not available in Revit LT as well. So if none of those are all that important to you, then Revit LT might be the perfect tool for you. There are a number of other differences, and I would recommend anybody go on the Autodesk.com site, go to the Revit LT page, and you can see a more detailed comparison on that site.
Cool. Okay. And this is another question from Kyle. Wait, I think you answered it twice. Cool. Moving on. Let's see. This is from Richard. Richard, can one consultant using Revit LT link to architect drawings but retain or restrict revisions of that drawing to the consultant only?
Well, Revit does have a linking system, so you can link files, other Revit files or other DWG files into Revit and use those files as a sort of a reference. that's sort of the only way to limit someone from making changes. I mean, someone could definitely go in, just like in other applications, go into the original file and make changes, but there is a referencing system that would prevent someone from making those changes or accidentally moving a wall that they didn't intend to move in the original project.
Cool. Okay. So Harold has a question.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Let's see. Harold is curious as to, well, he works in a big box retail company that only works in select plans, for example, fixture plans. All are currently developed in AutoCAD, but he has architectural consultants who take their DWG files and add the info to their Revit model. He was curious as to whether file sharing work with one model versus the traditional. Did I just?
No, it's a similar answer. Yeah, I mean, you can. Similar to AutoCAD with X referencing, you can use linking in Revit, and you can link either a DWG or another Revit file as a reference.
Okay, Zeno is curious. Does Revit LT also have shortcut keyboard commands?
Yes, it's got a whole keyboard shortcut system where you can define several keystrokes to call up a command. Unlike AutoCAD, we don't have a command line in Revit, but you can see the shortcuts show up in the status bar. I don't know, Heidi, if you want to show that on the screen in Revit. As you type a command, so if you type like W for wall, you can see down in the bottom there it starts showing you what commands might be available with wall, and as you continue to type more letters, it'll narrow down that list if there's multiple commands that start with a W. So that is one way of seeing your commands being entered through keyboard shortcuts. Well, that's the only way, actually.
Okay, and then here's another one. I mean, are the keyboard command shortcuts mostly obsolete since Revit has no command line, or?
That would be no. No, I mean, like we just showed. I mean, there is a shortcut system in place in Revit.
All right, and then Richard. This is from Richard. It is my understanding that earlier Revit LT limits structural components to parallel and perpendicular only. Is this correct? Is it still true? If so, is there consideration to change this?
Yeah, I was trying to think back on the changes. So we didn't make any changes to structural elements from 2013 to 2014. So if that was a limitation in the past, I can't recall if it is or not. I don't know, Heidi, if you can pull up the structural column, we can probably check right here. But we haven't made any changes between releases, but I can certainly take that back to the product team as a request if it doesn't indeed not exist. So if you go to properties, I can see it pretty quickly.
Cool. Okay, and let's see. Douglas is
here. No, so yeah, you can't do sloped columns. Yeah.
Okay. Douglas is, how do you change the dimensions, room dimensions, to go from the center of the wall to the inside face of the wall? This is a little technical, but
yeah, there are room settings in Revit. So looks like Heidi's trying to pull that up here. So in just the short answer, there are room settings. You can define whether you want to go center line of wall, face of wall, or face of structure. And then from there, it'll calculate the room volume or room area accordingly.
Okay, and what is the major difference between LT and Revit full version? What was removed?
Yeah, we kind of covered that in the first question.
Ooh, cool.
So the three major things that I noted, plus, like I said, there's a better list on Autodesk.com. So
cool. There was a lot of questions. We do have one that's about the rental. Is rental available on Revit as well as Revit LT? Gary, I think it does. Yeah.
Well, actually, so you can access Revit through the Building Design Suite. The Building Design Suite's available for as a rental option, but the standalone full version of Revit currently is not available as a rental. It's currently only available as perpetual license. And then same for Revit LT. It's the AutoCAD Revit LT Suite is the way you can access standalone Revit or access Revit LT and on a rental basis.
Okay, so Gary, going to the rental, on the subject of rental, what are like some frequently asked questions that you've encountered so far? Would you like to share that with us? Or?
Sure. Yeah. So a few of the questions that we've seen around rental is, is this does when you rent the software, does it what happens at the end of your rental period? So if you are renting for 3 months, you can renew that rental and continue. You can also always transition to move over to perpetual license. The rental software works just like the perpetual desktop software, so anything you've done using the rental software can be accessed using the perpetual license software. And similarly, if you're working with others, exchanging files, if you're doing work in a rented version of Revit LT, you can share those files with someone using a full perpetual license as well. So it really works just like the regular desktop software. It's just a different way to buy and access the software depending on your needs.
Very nice, very nice. Mike is curious as to, so if a person has some older AutoCAD drawings done in 3D, what would be the best approach to use those existing drawings? Bring it in or to use the drawing as an outline? He's thinking it might be wise to totally start from scratch other than the dimensional information from the AutoCAD drawing. Scott or Heidi, would you guys like to, it's a free-for-all, I guess.
I guess I can answer it. So the recommended workflow would be to bring those drawings in. If you wanted to build a model in Revit, you bring them in, and Revit has what's called an underlay. So you can bring those into Revit and import the DWG into Revit, and then start tracing or referencing that information inside of Revit to generate your model. If that's what you choose. I mean, you could also, if you've got the suite, you'll continue to have AutoCAD LT, and you could use those drawings inside of AutoCAD LT as well. So that's one of the reasons why we put the two products together, was to allow you to transition at your own pace. So if you're working in 2D in AutoCAD LT, we don't expect you to stop everything in AutoCAD LT and just jump over to Revit LT. We expect there to be some period of transition, obviously, to making that move to Revit LT.
And just to add to that, in my own experience as I was transitioning and learning Revit LT, I took a 3D model that I had of my house in AutoCAD and brought it in, just like Scott was saying here. I just imported it, and thinking that I was going to try to use as much as I could, the wall heights and all that, but it was so amazingly easy to use Revit functionality. All I ended up doing is just tracing in 2D. I just traced the plan, floor plan with my walls, and then modified them as necessary, inserted doors and windows, and found that I really needed to take minimal for my AutoCAD drawing, that it was, I think as you had suggested, just so easy to create the geometry in Revit or Revit LT that I didn't have to, try to trace a whole lot, just sort of the basic objects, and then let the BIM and the automation take over from there.
Yeah, and by tracing, I mean, you can actually pick a line and it'll generate the wall on that line. So it's as simple as maybe a single click in some cases, just picking the right lines, and it'll build up the walls accordingly.
Cool. Let's see.
Furniture or whatever you're doing.
Okay, let's do two more questions. I've kind of found these two very important ones. And okay, this one's from Stephen. You didn't really touch on layers and or line weights. How much control do you actually have? And what about conversion between AutoCAD and Revit seamlessly? I think it's a pretty smooth transition. I mean,
yeah, so specifically around layers. So Revit doesn't have a layering system like AutoCAD does, but they do have what's called categories. So like walls are its own category, furniture is a category. So you can start defining things, around that way, around your model. As far as line weights go, there is a way you can define line weights. It's somewhat managed by Revit, but not to the extent where you can't go in and start changing, or making adjustments to the line weights within the system. I don't know, Heidi, do you have anything to add in your history, experience?
Not on the Revit side.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, one last question. This is about the IFC format. How is it with the support for IFC formats for export and import?
Yeah, so with 2014 we added IFC support, so it has the same support that full Revit has. So anything you can do in Revit. I believe we are for export, we are certified for, we're certified for export for I think it's the latest standard.
2.0 or?
And then import, we're in the process of looking into that. So yeah, so we fully, we support it in both directions for Revit.
Cool, awesome. In that case, let's see. We do have a lot of questions, so I'll tell you what, attendees, I will format and forward them in a legible manner, and then send it out over to Gary, Heidi, and Scott as well, and then we should have them post it on our blog. That way we can answer questions about the transition and also about the rental options as well. I think it'd be really nice. Okay, in this case, Heidi, I guess I'll take over speaking duties.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
All right, I will make myself the presenter. Cool, let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so on behalf of the Novedge team and on behalf of Autodesk, I want to thank you all for joining us today. It's been really cool, and if you guys missed anything, the video is going to be uploaded on our channels for sure. Yeah, but if you guys are interested in picking up a digital version of AutoCAD Revit LT Suite 2014, you are more than welcome to check out our product page. If you want more information, you can contact our Autodesk specialist, Scott, at Novedge.com. We'll also be able to answer any questions about the rental options that are quarterly and also annually as well. So, yeah, check it out. And like I said earlier, we're going to try to have the questions on our blog as soon as we can. And if you want to get those updates in the quickest way possible, head on over to our Facebook, like us. And we're asking designers to like us on Facebook, so yeah, do check it out. It's going to be cool. And upcoming webinar next week will be about Chaos Group's V-Ray 3.0. I think they're currently in beta right now, and if you haven't signed up, please sign up. This is going to be a really cool webinar. We'll be talking about how V-Ray 3.0, all its new changes and new features as well. So head on over to novedge.com/webinar/87. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, 2 or 3 times, the webinar will be up on vimeo.com/novedge and youtube.com/novedge as well. So yeah, follow us on Twitter, join in on the conversation. Gary, Heidi, and Scott, thank you guys for coming in here. And Scott, are you on the East Coast by any chance, or?
Got off mute. Yes, I am.
So I hope you had lunch already. So we'll see what's up. But yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, please, if you guys have any questions, email Gary. Check out the Autodesk website as well too. All right. In that case, any last words, guys, or?
No, thank you all.
No, thank you.
Cool. All right. Have a good one. Thanks, guys.